Welcome to Shall We Cast, another Bible edition. I think it's Romans 12 today.
Yep.
I'll let you lead,
Alrighty.
young Padawan.
Romans 12, I'm reading from the King James Version. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. For I say through the grace given unto me to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly according as God hath dealt to every man that measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith. Or ministry, let us await on our ministering, or that he that teacheth on teaching, or he that exhorteth on exhortation. He that giveth, let him do it with simplicity. He that ruleth with diligence, he that sheweth mercy with cheerfulness. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionated one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, and serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. Distributing to the necessity of saints, given a hospitality. Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. That was chapter 12. I'm going to take over?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with verse 1. And I'll kind of read through my notes that I took. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. So, a couple things with verse 1 is that we are being called by Paul to be a sacrifice for God, but that cannot be just any sacrifice. It has to be a holy sacrifice. It has to be something that God seems as holy. So we can't just be of service to God and how we want to be of service. We have to do it how God states to do it. And then the second thing is that we have to remember that we were given grace to be of sacrifice, because if God wanted to, because He's just, He could have damned us to hell to pay for our sins, which is the only payment for that is death.
Yeah.
And that's where grace comes in. Jesus Christ, we are no longer in debt as long as we believe in Jesus Christ and that He was risen from the dead and defeated death. So that's verse 1, basically saying be grateful that you have the ability to serve God, because you could be on the other end, which the other end is God's enemy. And then second is when you serve God, don't do it from the world, do it in a holy manner. And for those of you who don't know what the holy manner is, I can't point it out, but there's many instances in the Bible where it can tell you how to properly worship God. That's what service means, worship. So,
first 5 books of Moses. If you want to read through the first 5 books of Moses, it'll show you what's pleasing to God. And then you go through the prophets, and if you didn't understand it through the first 5 books, prophets will tell you exactly, because Israel gets punished for it, and God speaking through the prophets again and again, clarifies, hey, you're doing this, this is what you should be doing, upholding justice, goes through it. So
it's good. And then also, a Ten Commandments is an easy way to start as well. just honoring those 10. It's simple. They're difficult because we are tempted by desire, but they're 10 simple rules that throughout the entire Bible have been stated for us to follow.
Yeah, which is in Exodus and also I think Deuteronomy.
Yep. And then verse 2, this is, I believe, the first two important verses of this chapter. Verse 2, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So when I broke down verse 2, I want to start with, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So this one's a little self-explanatory. Don't be conformed to the world. Whatever God says to do, do it. Whatever God says not to do, that is the world. Anything that goes against God is the world. It's your own flesh. It's what Satan has done, and that's why he's in this position where he's in. Because he went against God and chose his own path. The renewing of your mind, the second part of that sentence, is very important to understand. The word renewing means the word sacrifice or renewing means something has to die. And so we need to die to our flesh, we need to die to our desires, and have a new life with God. And so the term renewing your mind comes through constant physical, spiritual, and mental discipline, overcoming your bad habits and evil habits that would cause you to sin. If someone is struggling with fornication or sex outside of wedlock, if someone is struggling with fornication and sex outside of wedlock, it is recommended not to go to the clubs. It's recommended not to be on Tinder. So when it says renew your mind, it means you need to change your daily habits so that way your mindset shifts from seeking evil desires to seeking what God determines to be desirable. So that's a very important part of that verse that I think many people look over. They always want to say, well, I'm doing good, but then I keep sinning and I don't know why. Well, you got to break down what's causing you to sin, and then you have to break down, am I actually changing my habits, or am I just waiting for the sin to come and then fighting it? Am I being proactive with sin, or am I being reactive? You can be reactive because sometimes it just happens, but then there are other times where it's like you probably had a series of events that led you to that thought process that you wanted to sin. So that's what renewing your mind means.
I mean,
anything to add?
Yeah. Also, reading scripture is like that helps renew your mind, because especially when I first, you can't change your habits and stuff if you don't. Again, what we were talking about, like learning what's good to God. So when I restarted and I started reading the Torah, and I started started in the Torah and started reading through the Bible all the way. As I read through, I'd be convicted by stuff, and then I would change it. Like I stopped eating pork, which is a small thing. Like I tried, but at the time it was a big thing, because you would be surprised that when you stop eating pork, how many people try to get you to eat pork or criticize you for not want. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. I was like, that's the small thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, and as you go, as I learned, I would change to keep in line with God. So, yeah.
And then to finish verse 2, which bleeds into what you had said, the only way you're going to solidify the renewing of your mind is through knowledge and truth. And Jesus has called himself the way, the truth, and the light. Is that correct? And so when you hear the word truth and seeking honesty, it is essentially seeking God. You got to seek what is right, and one of the main ways to do that is reading scripture, because that is one of the main ways that God communicates to us. Thousands of testimonies in here. There's a lot of good moral guidances that we're supposed to follow, and if we don't follow, well, we have free will, but there's negative consequences that come after that. And so that's what the ending of that verse means. you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. God gives us the ability to discern. God gives us the ability to discern what is right through Him, through Scripture, through prayer, through communion, etc.
I mean, also in nature too. Like the things in Scripture reflect the way that the world works, and that's why I didn't really believe in the Bible because of like Jesus or anything like that. I believed in the Bible because I seen what it said about nations that don't do certain things, and then when I see our nation or other nations do it and how they start to decline, I'm like, oh well, it's very true. So, like that's what actually convinced me is that how accurate it was on the how nations decline, and if you do these things. If you put this out into the universe, and I say the universe because I believe God's programmed the universe, the laws and stuff like that, so that if you have certain actions, you'll get certain reactions, and that pretty much is how I actually came to really believing in God, and so so reading, learning the Scripture, living it out, watching and seeing the reactions in the world, seeing what because you can do good stuff and have bad stuff still happen to you, but like you'll still get rewarded. Sometimes it's a long-term thing. It is a struggle, and then you'll see other people follow and they'll get rewarded right away, the way you see it, you don't always see the big picture. Sometimes it kind of unfolds, and sometimes you're kind of narrow vision. So I would say if you're doing, like, you're renewing your mind, you're doing all that stuff, and you're living it out, like I would say if you're struggling, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. Just hold the course and let the plan unfold.
A lot of people think being saved and being blessed means that your life is automatically easy, you're rich all of a sudden, you don't have any problems anymore. That's actually the exact opposite. So God does bless you. He absolutely does bless you when you obey Him, of course. And then you are also punished for disobeying Him. And just because you are saved and blessed at times does not mean all of a sudden that your problems are going to go away. It just simply means you now have a way to fight them. Right? Because there's plenty of problems in the world that will never go away because humankind has cursed itself. Right? We have lived separate from God and therefore are facing the consequences of it daily. However, there's a way to fight that. Get rid of it? No. Fight it? Yes. And that is through God, and that is through reading the Scripture, prayer, building a relationship with Jesus Christ, believing in Him, and making sure that you're doing the will of God to combat the evil that is coming towards you daily. But you can't do it by yourself. You have to do it by using God as armor.
Yep.
You ready for verse 3?
Yep.
So verse 3 says, "For I say through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more lightly than he ought to think, but to think somberly, according as God hath dealt to every man that measure of faith." I got verse 3 is, be humble. Do not think of yourself as holier than thou, because you and your brothers have all sinned. You and your sisters have all sinned. Everyone that you know has all sinned, including yourself. So you should not think that I am above someone else. And that's kind of what I got from that verse, is that we are all judged according to our life, and we have all sinned, and we all need Jesus Christ. If you want to, I don't know if you can, but the last sentence.
But to think so...
Somberly.
Soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measures of faith.
I don't quite understand that one. Is that saying that the measure of our own sins?
Hold on. 12. You're asking questions.
What was that?
Alright, so King. Oh, I just forgot. Oh, come on. Yeah. Search.
Verse 3.
For through grace given me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, but to use sound judgment, as God has assigned to each person a measure of faith. So, as we have many parts in one body, so it sounds like, all right, so if you continue reading, it says, for just as we have many parts in one body, and all the parts do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Messiah, and everyone's part of one another. We have gifts, so like measure of faith. So I think you're given a measure of faith. I'd like to believe in Him, but I also think he's talking here about the gifts too. I think they're connected in that, like, He gives you.
I wrote the actual gifts down. That's in 1 Corinthians, so He gives you.
Oh, that's good. But I think here he's talking about how, like, as we get further, I don't want to go too far ahead, but I think that in context it fits. So he's talking about a measure of faith, but we all have like a different. That's not. I don't think it's necessarily a different amount of faith. I think it's a different kind of faith because the way I think sometimes because the way you live, the different gifts, and then it goes on to say that each one has a different gift. You're made up of you're many parts of one body, and that not everyone has the same job. So I think he's describing that has to do with it, and that defines measure of faith. So
okay.
Like,
well, let's add on to that with verse 4 and 5 and 6, which you just read. So this was in 1 Corinthians 12, verses 8 through 10, and it lists the gifts, stating that one of the gifts is knowledge, faith, wisdom, healing, miracles, prophecy, discerning spirits, and speaking in tongues. Those are the gifts that are listed in 1 Corinthians that is being referenced in verses 4 through 6 when it's saying that we all have different jobs, but we are all part of the same body of Christ.
I mean, there's probably so if you're talking about like spiritual gifts, yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, generally those do fit, but I think there's more than that as well, like, because each person has their own walk, they've been through different stuff, so that it gives them different. So like spiritually, yeah, there's gifts, but then there's also like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say worldly gifts. It's not world, like stuff that.
That's why I only left that, because I wasn't quite sure if he was referencing like the skills we were given to benefit.
But like a good example is in Exodus, when they're talking about building the ark, and God said, go to this. I forget the guy's name. I don't know if it's Tubal. No, but basically he was an iron, or he was able to work with metals and stuff. Yeah. And then God had been teaching him. It talks about how God gave him the skill to do this and to do the work. So that's.
I thought that's what that meant. Verse 6, in the sense of like, we were all given talents, you could say, or blessed with skill more than others in certain areas, and I think that's what it means, is use those skills to benefit God and His people. Don't use them for like your own selfish desires.
Yeah.
Okay. Verse 7. Or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teacheth on teaching, or he that exhorteth on exhortation, he that giveth, let him do it with simplicity, he that ruleth with diligence, he that sheweth mercy with cheerfulness. Those verses, I think that was pretty self-explanatory. Do you have anything to add to 7 and 8? Okay. Moving on to verse 9. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Verse 10, be kindly affectionated one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. So verse 9 is essentially talking about love without hypocrisy. Don't love with expectation. Just love to love. Hate that which is evil. Disregard what is evil. Don't even allow it to play out in your life. Just walk away, get rid of it, combat it, whatever the scenario needs. And then cleave to that which is good, which is God. So replace anything bad in your life to the best of your ability with that which is what God would want you to. Try to fight your own desires. If you are hanging in an area where there's constant sin and you feel yourself falling into that, try to find a different area to hang out, etc. It's kind of what verse 9 is saying.
Well, love without expectations.
Love without hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's what it means. I mean, because there has to be expectations, because God's love, like to love how God loves, he spells it out. So there are certain expectations to that love. But I think love without hypocrisy, I mean, you could look at like, you know, kind of the thing that everyone goes to, like the splinter in the eye, right? So if you have a splinter, basically if, you know, but I mean, it kind of tailor it to that, but that kind of that same sense of like, if you're going to, you know what I mean? So,
Sure.
yeah, I'm just, think that was.
No, I mean,
But, so,
it's just that the word dissimulation, when I was looking up that sentence,
yeah.
that's the translated sentences that would come up is like love without hypocrisy was the main one.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud, and like,
No, for sure.
from, yeah, I very so I do look up stuff, but like I very rarely go with like a lot of Christian interpretations. I like to, because there's certain, depending on where you, so like you have different churches, and things like that, and so like depending on a lot of verses, depending on what church, what kind of church you go to, like it can, you know, like the do not judge thing. If you go to like a regular mainstream like church, like you can't judge anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So like when I look up the stuff, I like, not that I don't say that they're wrong or anything like that. Just I take it with a grain of salt, and what I do is well, as you read the Bible, you'll be able to more reference things in your head against verses in Paul, because Peter will tell you that you can't read Paul unless, or not that you can't read it. It says that you can't understand Paul unless that you know the Torah very well, because almost everything, a lot of things that Paul references is for people. And then I think in Romans, there's a spot where he even says, I'm writing to people who know the Torah, not to those who aren't. And so if you don't know the Torah and you're reading Romans and Corinthians, and he's bringing up these things, then you're not going to, like, because Peter says that, that, like, basically fool or ignorant people will take it and twist it to their destruction, pretty much, or something along those lines. I can't remember word for word. But, like, so, like, whenever I'm looking at it, I always kind of vaguely reference it off of the stuff that I've read from, like, the Old Testament and stuff like that. But it doesn't really matter, because the Old Testament, New Testament thing isn't really a thing. So like, there is no page between the Old Testament and New Testament.
So just one book.
Yeah. And if you would have, like Paul, like if anyone was like, oh, the Old Testament don't like Paul, probably smack. I mean, not literally, but you know, he probably like
verbally smack you.
Yeah, take off his glove, like
smack you with some truth.
But yeah, so. To love without expectation, I don't know what that means, because there's always an expectation. There's an expectation from God, right?
I can see it as love without condition. Like, God always loves us, but he doesn't allow sin, and so he has to judge accordingly.
What would hypocrisy? So like you have, it says what, love without hypocrisy?
Is what the commentary I had found on the word dissimulation.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't quite sure what dissimulation meant.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so wait, it doesn't say.
When I read it, I said, "Let love be without dissimulation."
Yeah, which I thought. Oh, so that's good. Let love be without hypocrisy, detesting what is evil.
Holding fast to that, so cleaving. Yeah.
So, I mean, so it does kind of explain. So, like, I guess, because if you look in that sentence, it says, "Let love be without hypocrisy, holding, or, and then, or detesting what is evil."
Yeah.
So it probably means like, how to word it, like, I mean, I think it kind of sounds like, if someone's doing evil, like, yeah, love them, but like, don't accept the.
Yeah, like,
the
God loves us all, and He wants us all to go to Him, but He refuses to accept our sin.
Yeah.
He can't, because that would make Him non-holy, which would contradict the fact that He is the Holy One.
Kind of like the churches that do the LGBTQ thing.
Yeah, you can allow anybody in the church, but you cannot promote their sin.
Yeah.
You cannot promote their sin with, "It's okay, be who you are, never change." Because literally we just said you have to renew your mind.
Especially when it comes to like transitioning kids that, and like chemically castrating them and all that stuff. Like.
And this actually, verse 1 and 2 actually fights those churches. Because verse 2 says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." So churches that say you don't have to change, you can come as you are, you will accept all of you, which we do accept everybody, but we don't accept the sin you bring. So we don't condemn you. But if you come into the church, a proper church, and we're going to let you know you're a sinner, because we're all sinners. And we're not going to tell you that what you're doing isn't wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of churches are doing. They're promoting the LGBT, they're promoting pedophilia, they're promoting all these sins instead of combating them with truth. And that's what's going on.
Which I'm trying to get someone on, but he's actually, I mean, I don't really want him, I don't know if he wants to talk about that specifically.
Yeah.
But trying to get him on, because he's going to a church which the LGBT, like the church leadership is actually changing the rules and they're actually skirting around the actual church rules that they have for changing things to change it and make it LGBT. And so, like, I guess people in his church and stuff are trying to fight it, the leadership on that, but it's sounding like they're losing. So, so he was talking about, because he plays an active role in the church, in their worship and stuff. And he's like, I don't care about that. Like, if they don't, live the word, then I have to go. So,
I mean, it's the same. It's not just with that. It's churches that also practice pagan holidays, and then encourage people to practice Halloween. Oh, trunk or treat's just for the kids. They can come dressed up as fantasy characters that have never existed in any holy manner. It's okay. They can come mock God by dressing up as the devil. They can, dress up as an angel. It's like churches now are being run by conformists and not by actual disciples of Jesus. They're claiming a religion, not a discipleship. Because if you're actually following Jesus' rules and the teachings of the Bible the way Jesus tells you to, you would actually know that the stuff that's being promoted in churches right now is actually hurting Christianity and sending you. They're helping you go to hell,
which
by not telling you the truth.
Kind of been the MO of the Christian church the entire time it's existed. There's always been like specific groups of people who follow, like smaller groups, but the church at large, like say the Catholic Church when it was in its prime, and even the Protestant church after, like, and then but you've always seen, like, the church, like, adding things that you have to follow, different holidays, worship this, do this, adding this group, conforming so that this group can fit in there, and like you don't have to change that much from what they already. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of been always like, look at slavery in the U.S. So like, a good portion of America claimed to be Christians, and then in the South there were even whole like white churches, and they taught that it was a good thing that you had a slave and you were taking care of. You know what I mean? Like all that thing.
They take scripture out of context and they bend it to their will.
And they gave slaves or if they had Bibles, or if they could read, or they had specific Bibles that only had certain passages in it, so that they couldn't
listen to your master passages type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, that's the modern world. And I did see something online where Louisiana governor made it is forcing all public education to have the Ten Commandments in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but
I mean,
I think it sounds like a good thing, but it also sounds like it's about to stir up a lot of.
It's a step in the like. Let's see, like just having the Ten Commandments. So like to me, it's kind of a surface thing.
Yeah.
Because just having the Ten Commandments in the classroom, I mean, yeah.
Right, because it's not the most important thing.
Yeah. No. Someone might read it and be like, oh, like you know what I mean. But teaching it is much more important. Like why, like do not murder, do not steal, like this stuff, like how it applies to you in your life. What's the purpose? You know, why be a good neighbor? What does that bring? It brings the peace that you want.
Yeah, and it can also be negative to teach the law and not also teach what Jesus was here for, or even teach about Jesus. Because when kids who don't know anything about God or the Bible or Jesus, first thing they hear is the law and how we must follow it. I feel that can be a negative connotation to.
I mean,
what the point of.
It depends on how it's being like. So if you're just reading it on the board, then yeah. But like no, like if you're so like let's say that it's a Jewish school and they're taught only that's good. I mean, like ethically how like because it's at least half of of the two things that underpin the commandments. To love God, with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then to love your neighbor. So that main part, because like even if you're an atheist, like because most atheists when they talk about like values and stuff, they're just talking about Christian values that were instilled in like because they come from a background of Christian values. You're right in that you do need like Jesus, but like when you look at Jesus' teachings, all Jesus did was come around and he went like, oh, the Pharisees are saying like they built these other rules. No, like this is what the Torah says. This is what you're supposed to do. This is what God asks of you. Like do this, and like that's what God expects of you.
Right. Jesus didn't come to change the laws. He came to give you a way to salvation, because otherwise, without him, we would be sentenced to death.
Well, so in context of the Old Testament, the salvation thing, like divorce of Israel, all that stuff, Israel gets sent away into the nations, right? He said, and then in Hosea he says, I'll send you away, but then I will bring you back. And then so, because Paul talks about it, I believe it's in Romans, where he talks about the law of the marriage law, and how when you die you're dead to the law, and how if a man the whole. But if you look at what he's talking about, it's that in the context, it's the same context as you read when you read in Isaiah and all those other ones where they talk about God divorcing Israel, and then sending Israel away. He says, "I'll bring you back." The reason why when I read, the reason why Paul's so excited is he understands that when because the new covenant doesn't say it comes to like the Gentiles, right? Like because a lot of people are like, well, there's a new church. Like no, it says it's coming to Israel and Judah, right? You're either part of Israel as a whole or you're nothing. So if there's Israel in the church, don't be in the church, be in Israel. You know what I'm saying? Because if someone's making that distinction, because that's what the Bible teaches. Even Paul is teaching that you're grafted into Israel. You don't become the new thing. And it only says that some of the branches were taken off. So that means that there are still some Jews who are in good Jews, Israel, who are in good standing with God, and that you're being grafted into their blessing, right? So, so be with Israel, and that's one of the things that used to excite me, because when I first started reading through, it would have these verses where it'd be like, hey, like, are you a Gentile? Like, you don't have to worry. Like, don't let anyone else tell you that you can't follow me. Like, you can follow me and be a part of me.
Yeah.
And, like, if you do this, I will bless you this way. And then he says, I'll send them away, but I will bring you back and still more with you. And so, like, that's awesome. But the reason I brought that up is because, like, one of the main reasons Jesus died is because to make the new covenant. So they were bound by that old covenant, right? And so, and if you think about it, but I'm not going to go there, because there's a whole bunch more I could take, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to end this real quick. But basically, when Jesus died and rose again, and it talks about the new covenant, it ended that old covenant, which people put the Torah and the law with the old, but that's not the covenant. Those are just God's rules. Like, even if you read Psalm, like, I think they ignore the majority of what they read when it talks about these are the things, even if you look at God's values under Abraham, like all of that, it's been pretty much the same. Like, don't kill kids, treat your neighbor, don't have sex with your wife or your friend's wife, or someone else's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like that kind of thing has always been, like, very clear in the Bible, right? But Jesus died, rose again. New Testament, which is for Israel, but we get included in that. So I forgot why I was saying all that stuff, but salvation. So follow Jesus. Jesus is the culmination, because a lot of the messianic prophecies that they were looking for, Jesus fulfilled. You could look. People would say, like, the Trinity is a New Testament thing, but it's really not. It's actually the Jews, like, two powers in heaven. You can read that book.
So we're going to jump in. One of these passages is Genesis 19:24, and let's just click out to that. This is the Sodom and Gomorrah story, and I'm going to shut off my interlinear pane to make this a little bigger for the camera. And it says here in verse 24, "Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven." Now, what is odd about that verse? It has, let me look at it. The Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. The Lord is raining down fire from the Lord. You have Yahweh twice in the same verse, and they look like two different characters. And Jewish thinkers and readers, they saw this, and this became part of what would later become known as the two powers in heaven. Here's another one. Exodus 15:3. This is the song of Moses after they go through the Red Sea. And we have this line in here, "The Lord, Yahweh, is a man of war. The Lord is his name." So, even that, the Lord is his name, but the Lord is a man of war. Since other Old Testament passages had Yahweh not as a man, very clearly, and sort of a transcendent being, living in the heavens somewhere, this verse sort of stood out in intertestamental Judaism as significant as portraying the notion that Yahweh would come to earth in human form. And we're going to see how this fit into other passages in a moment. But they looked at this and thought, well, this is explicit. So there's Yahweh on earth as a man, whenever that happens. But that doesn't mean that Yahweh is still not in heaven and everywhere. So apparently, like, there's two. One in human form and one not. And you see how this would stimulate their thinking. Daniel 7, 9, and 10 was actually a crucial passage. And there's a lot of rabbinic discussion, a lot of intertestamental discussion on this. The passage reads, "As I looked, thrones," notice the plural, "were set in place, were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat." Now we know who the Ancient of Days is. This is God. So God is seated now. His clothing was white as snow, hair of his head like wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. This is language drawn from Ezekiel 1, where it's very clearly God on his throne chariot. And so there's no ambiguity here. This is God. A stream of fire issued, came out from before him, so on and so forth. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. Now you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, if you go down to verse 13, "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him." So there's a second figure here. They're both in the same verse, Son of Man, Ancient of Days, but it's to the Son of Man that everlasting kingship is given. Now we're going to talk about the description of coming on the clouds in heaven, because the Jewish community knew that was an epithet, a title that you would give only to deity and only to Yahweh. But Yahweh is already in the passage. So who's this other guy? And he's the Son of Man, in other words, one like a human being. So these were three fundamental passages, and we're going to come back to Daniel 7 later, that really contributed to this idea. Now, if you're interested in it, the fundamental work written in 1977 on this is Alan Siegel's Two Powers in Heaven.
Even in the scripture that God often talks about himself in the second or third, I can't remember, second or third person, where he'll be like Jehovah sent fire down from Jehovah. And it's like, well, that's a weird verse. And there's another verse in Isaiah where he's talking, and then he talks about, it's like there's just a ton of things. There's different levels of things that maybe one day we'll cover. The angel of the Lord, how like there's one angel that's different from the others, how he can interact with people, because there's other angels. Someone tried to bow down and worship him. He said no.
Yeah.
Like, don't do it. Another angel bowed down and worship, and the angel was like, cool. You know what I mean? So, all right.
No, you're good. We want to move on to verses 11 and 12.
Yeah.
Not slothful in business. Well, I'm going to start with reading verse 10, so we can have some context.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Love. And just keep going. Oh. Yeah.
Sure?
Yep.
So, verse 10 is, "Be kindly affectionated one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer." What I got from that was our spirit must be on fire for the Lord, and throughout our life we must feed it oxygen to keep the flames going. You can, but if you just claim God, from my experience, and you claim Jesus, but you don't daily live like that, and you don't practice his teachings, the fire for Jesus doesn't stay very long, from what I've understood.
Do not be lacking in zeal. So like, don't be that guy at work that's like, this place, oh, lie. You know what I mean? Like, don't be that guy. Live with a smile on your face, even when it sucks. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like when Jesus said, like the Pharisees, when they fast, they fast with a sad face. You know what I mean? Or so that you know that they're fasting. But he says, don't let anyone know that you're fasting. Don't. Let's see. Be fervent in spirit. So that's kind of those two things. Same thing. Keep serving the Lord. And like to keep serving the Lord, like it is something that you have to consciously do to serve, because there's going to be times when you don't really want to, and like there's been times like when I've been working security, and like there's someone comes up to talk to me, and I'm like, do I even want? I don't really want to deal with. I didn't want to come.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to be here in the first place. But come to me, and I'm like, oh, okay. So then I listen to what they have to say, and we have a good conversation. And then, like after that, I normally feel like, kind of, because they always leave, and sometimes I'm able to give them some advice that like helps them. So,
Yeah.
but if I would have kept that same, like, kind of goes back to the verse before. If I would have kept that same attitude, like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to talk to you, you know what I mean? Like, it would have never worked out. Let's see, where was it? Don't distract. Oh, rejoice in hope, enduring in distress, persisting in prayer, contributing to the needs of the holy ones, extending hospitality. So, basically it means, like, yeah, even if you're going through a hard time, like, help with what you could help with. You know what I mean? Like, don't distress. Like, I know people will be facing things, but I kind of have the thing, like, it sucks, and yeah, I do get stressed out sometimes, but I still have this thing, like, it's gonna work, it's gonna turn out how it turns out at the end of the day, and I have to give it to God, so I've done everything that I can do. Like, there's nothing, so I'm not gonna sit here and, like, with a sad face and sit and mourn in my own, wallow in my own depression or,
Yeah.
And extending hospitality. So yeah, like help other people, help the holy ones, which is like, dang flies.
Satan flies. Go ahead.
So extending hospitality, like all right, that was all I.
Okay. And then verse 14, bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. That one's pretty outspoken. Bless which persecute you, those who are against you, bless them, pray for them. And then the second sentence, I'm assuming it means bless and curse not, meaning do not bless them and curse them in the same sentence. That was an interesting angle of your hand.
I know.
If you want to touch on 14, but when it says bless and curse not, I'm assuming that means do not bless them and then curse them in the same sentence. Like, don't say, oh, it's okay, and then when they turn around, you're cursing them behind their back because you're upset with them.
Well, so mine says, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. So,
so mine's good. I thought it meant like don't say it's like don't bless them and then behind their back
that's why
do
you
the
should,
opposite.
You should always have 2 or 3 different versions. So like if you read something in the King James and it's kind of hard to process, you read the other 2 versions and you can get a sense of what is going on. Cause I so when you told me that, I've read like maybe 2 or 3. No, I read the King James, ESV, TLV, and I forget that all, but I read it a few times in different versions, so I had a sense of a better sense of what it was trying to say. That's why when you asked me that question earlier, I pulled it up to see if it was worded any different.
Yeah.
But so yeah, just do not curse. So, and I take this in the sense of like when it talks about your enemy, like I take it in the sense of like a social thing. So like if your enemy is, you're having beef with the Karen across the street or something like that, or your neighbor, like it's not really like the enemy that's coming to like destroy your town. You know what I mean? I think there's a difference there, because when I read in the Bible, like you'll see it even in the Old Testament as you read through, it'll say love and treat your enemy this way, but then also you'll read on and it'll say like in the war context, it'll be like, oh, curse the da da da, and like they've come to this and that, and the Lord put them, so like I think there's different contexts, but I mean, Lord give me grace if I'm wrong, but that's just what I see when I read. Like you have the context of what kind of enemy it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and you could say like Jesus, asked forgiveness for or he said, have mercy or do not hold us accountable for crucify. I forget the exact words he used. Basically, do not. Gosh dang it! It always slips my mind when I want to say it, but yeah, it's a different so like he did forgive us. He says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," that kind of thing. And if you look at that, like, I mean, it was kind of in the context of like his neighbors were destroying. He went to his own, and they didn't accept him, like John says in chapter 1. Don't quote me, but it's like 12 or 13, I think. Yeah, but when he comes back, that's when you gotta worry, because
Yeah.
he ain't gonna be on that. Forgive them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's a judgment day coming.
Yeah.
So 15 is rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Do you have anything to add for 15 or 16?
Yes, I'm gonna read it in
Go ahead.
English.
Yeah. Not in Shakespearean.
Yeah. So, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but associate with the lowly. Right.
Yeah. Basically, just be humble. Do not think you're better than anyone else.
Yeah, which I struggle with, because sometimes I'm working out and I'm like, these god dang monkeys, you know what I mean? Like,
Nope, I don't condone.
yeah,
No.
mm-hmm. Yeah. but the truth is, it's like we often form opinions off of a small group of people,
Yeah.
right? And so, because especially
Stereotypes.
well, especially I mean stereotypes are real, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but we only interact, if you look at it from, like, the majority of people that we interact with are the ones that are, like, because they're always the ones that, like, the domestic abuse repeat offenders, the ones that, like, fighting, having guns, knives, that's who we interact with. But if you think about it, there's a good portion that you don't ever see.
Yeah.
Like, and that's because they're staying out the way because it's not safe for them to go. And like I remember working when I first started working, I was at the high rise at Beacon, and I remember once I started working there, and because I would write down everything. Like when you first get there, and they're like, oh, well, you need to do this, and so like you do it to a T, right? And then so I was doing that, and wasn't getting anything done, but I was like, all right, I was still in that gun ho, so I was like, all right, forget that. They're not going to do anything. Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write down all the camera times. So like in my report, I'd write down the exact camera times of when the incident happened, spell it out, and then I would send it to not just the manager, but also the one above them. That way, because there was a time when they weren't sending those to the big lady, the head honcho, it wasn't until but anyways, there was times when like people would come down to that, like I normally wouldn't see, and they would thank me, and they're like, yeah, we only get to come out really when you're here, so and it's just so associating with the lowly, like don't be too good to go certain places, you know what I mean, or work certain places. Because you never know, like, what kind of, impact and stuff that you might have, so.
I agree.
Yeah.
So.
I still hate that place, though.
Verses 17 through 18. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. I'll give my meaning of that, and then you can go ahead. Mm-hmm. So, do not live with this term eye for an eye, Do not think that when someone does evil to you that you got to go do the same, if not worse. That's just, you're breeding the evil instead of fighting it and extinguishing it. And then provide things honest in the sight of all men. What I took from that is honesty, the truth. Jesus, live like Jesus, be like Jesus, and be a representation of Christ to men, especially the men that don't know who or what Christ is. Combat evil with good intentions. Don't come at it with evil vengeance intentions. And it actually states that in verse 19, dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but give place unto the wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. And then in verse 18, if possible, to live in peace with people. Do your best to make amends, even if you don't think it was your fault. Try to live at peace. Try to speak the truth and be honest. And make being around you bearable. But it also says as much as lies. So if there's certain situations to where you just can't be at peace with this person and you have to walk away, I think that's acceptable, and it's better than staying there and damning both you and that person through anger and violence.
Which verse was it?
17 through 19.
Okay, 17 through 19. So, let's see. Repay no one evil for evil. Give thought what is good in the eyes of all people. Give thought to what is good in the eyes of all people. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live in shalom, peace, with all people. Never take your own revenge, loved ones, but give room for God's wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Jehovah. Rather, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is
Just finish it. Just finish 20 to 20.
Feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For by doing so, you will heap coals of fire upon his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Really, before you start your interpretation, verse 21 to me kind of just sums up those sentences. The last sentence is, do not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good.
Yeah, to 21.
Yep.
Yeah, do not, pretty much. And then here he's making a reference to Psalms. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. Actually, I have some here.
While you're looking that up, a good movie to watch for that verse is Saving Private Ryan. As he tries to save a couple of the enemies that they're fighting in that war as a medic.
Yeah.
While also saving his own men from the same enemies. So people that were dying on the battlefield, he didn't believe in the guns and all that stuff, so he was just a medic when he had joined. And so he was just out there providing medical attention at the risk of being bombed with no protection. And when he would see an enemy, I believe it was the Japanese they were fighting, but I didn't really watch the movie all the way.
And Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, I'm not sure what war they were fighting. But I know they were fighting...
Germans, I thought?
They were Asian. So they were fighting the enemies.
Who?
And instead of...
Or, what'd you say? You can... Hacksaw?
Was that Hacksaw?
Oh! Hacksaw
I
Ridge.
thought it was...
Alright.
Well, she was showing...
Yeah, that's why I was
and
confused. Saving Private Ryan is
I
German.
mixed it up. Listen.
Your
I'll
wife saved
keep
you.
that... Yes, he did.
Your wife saved
She
you.
did.
Because I was so confused. You're like Asian people. I'm like, yeah.
But the point still stands that the main character in whatever movie it was saving the enemies while also trying to save his own people from the same enemies that he was saving.
Yeah.
So at the cost of being shot, he would say, oh, you need help? Let me add this tourniquet, or stop this bleeding, or instruct them on how to do it at the risk of that person just shooting him or killing him.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good guy, because I probably would have been. There's not.
And while all his men were retreating to the base at the bottom of the cliff, he was actually one of the very few, I think the only one originally up there extracting men back to the cliff.
Yeah.
And he even extracted a couple enemies to the cliff to get medical attention, but I'm not sure what the results of that were.
No, I mean that's a good, and then but his interpretation, the Bible was wrong, but he lived it because he was a pacifist. The Bible doesn't teach pacifism,
Yeah.
but he's a good. He's not gonna get.
Can't fault him.
Yeah.
Because
And he stuck to his convictions. Like you can't. Like most people.
he chose a sacrifice that was for the betterment of people.
Yeah.
Not for the world, but for what he believed he was doing good intentions
Yeah.
under his faith.
Yeah.
And he even went against all his companions. He went against his leaders who were telling him, just take the gun during the whole war. Take the gun. Just grab it, it's right there. And he refused. And he ended up, I remember because once the main character came back from the cliff and was done extracting, they
Yeah.
had to go fight within the next day or two, and the leader claimed, I know this is your Sabbath, and so he allowed the main character to lead in prayer before they went out to fight. And the leaders above the leader was like, why aren't you guys out yet? And then they're like, well, this guy's leading in prayer. And so his companions, who were against the way of his life, ended up accepting it because they saw what it was doing to him. He was a living testimony of God at that time.
Yeah. No, you're right. Oh, oh my God. Almost there. Keep going. You're good.
I was at, I didn't finish the movie. I have no idea what happened after that. I don't know if they lost or I just know that scene was really impactful when I saw it. Thought it was a really good scene. We're Saving Private Ryan on Hacksaw Ridge. Movies are combined.
Actually, we're not going to read the whole thing, but this proverb actually reflects what Paul is saying quite well, but I'll skip down to, so if Proverbs 25, verse 21, if thine enemy be hungry, give him bread to eat, and if he be thirsty, give him water to drink, for thou shalt heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord shall renew thee. And then the other one is, Exodus 23:25, which is actually what I vaguely remember somewhere in Deuteronomy something talking about love your enemies, but I think I just imagined that. But see, what happens is I remember things, and maybe it wasn't quite, because when I was going through Matthew, I used to go back, because Jesus quotes a lot of Deuteronomy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, when I was growing up, I was always taught that Jesus brought these hip new teachings.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, this is unique to Jesus. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then it wasn't until I started reading it, and I was like, wait a minute, haven't I heard this someplace?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I vaguely, so there's times when I read stuff in the Old Testament, but I can't recall it. And then when I Google it, it doesn't come up. But then sometime when I'll be reading through it again, I'll find it, but it'll be, way too late by that point. This end part, go ahead and read the last, 2 verses again.
Verses 20 through 21. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good.
And so this is a key to being a good neighbor, because a lot of people will be petty. Like we have this thing about being petty and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and repaying your neighbor for this and that, and tit for tat. But Exodus, chapter 23, verse 4: if you find your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you must surely bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of the one that hates you lying down under its burden, do not leave it, rather you are to release it with him. It makes sense that when Peter says that in order to understand Paul, you have to have a healthy understanding of, the Torah, because really what all he's doing is quoting a bunch of stuff from, and keeping the sense of the meaning of the Torah in there, and he's teaching it in his letter. He's not teaching a new thing, but the same old things, right? And so, like, that picture of your enemies, your enemies, you find someone, say someone stole your enemies, the person who hit your car, and you see it, parked someplace. Like, it is your duty to go and tell that person where his car is.
Regardless of the situation, it's your duty to be righteous in the sense of doing what is right in the eyes of God.
Yeah.
Regardless of if it's against your enemies or for your enemies, if you need to help them because that's what God calls you to do, then that's what you need to do. There is no exceptions. If it's right and you're doing something that aligns with God, then you need to do it.
Yeah. Basically, treat your neighbor well, even if they treat you bad. So if they hate you or whatever, like, still treat them well. Don't go out of your way to, don't leave a flaming bag of poo on their doorstep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now if you're doing that prank and it's just like you don't know the person, that's a little different because that's kind of funny. But I'm just saying, no, I'm joking. No, don't do that. I mean, there's no hate there. It's just
No, but I'm sure there's somewhere something that says not to be a nuisance. Come on.
Hurry up, Susan. Get the fire extinguisher. This one's out of control. All right, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. Don't do that. But yeah. But then also you have Luke. Luke and Matthew, they're kind of referencing the same thing. Where it says basically, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, but I tell you, basically not to repay evil for evil. And I mean, so it's the same stuff. Jesus told it to you, Paul told it to you, like, and you still don't get it. I mean, it's hard. Like, it is hard to be like to live the way that God wants you to live sometimes, especially if someone like gets under your nerves, like. Cause there's times when I'm tempted to like just grab a bat and break someone's knees.
And sometimes it comes in ways of like you're already angry and the day's already passed, but then realizing your mistake and then coming around to make amends.
Yeah.
Even if they started it, but you know that you could have handled it with more patience and less anger, which then added fuel to their fire. You can come back in situations and like that and be like, hey man, I probably overreacted to what happened, or whatever that scenario may be, which is very difficult to do.
Bring flowers and get well soon if it's after the point where they're in the hospital and you realize that, and then you can go apologize.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never too late.
After they're in the hospital?
I'm just playing. I'm joking.
Hey man, sorry, that was just reflex.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to paralyze you.
You did sneak up on me.
Yeah.
Oh, but no, but it is and that's what I mean. Like, this goes back to just putting the 10 Commandments in. Like, even after if you look in Exodus, even after he states the 10 Commandments, he then goes into that's where like Exodus 25. I think 10 Commandments is like 20. I think Exodus 20 or something like that. It might be 19. It's 19 or 20. But anyways, after he gives them, he goes into some explanation, kind of explains it how you would apply some of that stuff. Like, the same thing must occur in school. So, like, or if you're going to teach kids to teach ethics or whatever, the biblical values, is that you have to be able to break it down in a way like, hey, this is this. And if you do this, if you treat people well, if you don't make fun of kids, they're not going to come back and shoot up the school.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully. Like, but then if they do.
Depends what agency says, here is a free bag of rifles, sir.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I thought about this a lot, like, because we've had a lot of, like, shootings. Like, or we've had a lot of shootings, so we don't have the values that we used to have. Because you used to be able to bring, like, shotguns to the school and have it in your truck or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, it's, the lack of guns is what makes the kids unsafe nowadays, but you don't have the morals to be able to have guns near the school. So if you want, I always say that it's not the gun that's the issue, right? People always talk about, oh, we gotta ban guns. I'm like, no, we need to fix morality. We need to teach ethics and values. That's the issue. If you don't fix that, then it's going to be stabbings, and then it'll be stonings, and I don't know if it'll be ston. I guess you could run up and like hit some people with.
If you ban guns, we're going to turn into Europe.
Yeah, it's still killing. There's still mass people blowing up stuff, running people over with trucks. They're going to find a way.
There's a good analogy that's so because people can hurt me with it, I shouldn't have the right to own it. And then the guy made the next statement saying, well, why don't we just ban all vehicles then?
Yeah.
If someone could take it and run me over, does that mean that I shouldn't have the right to own it?
I mean, in most Arab countries, that would be if you applied that logic, no one would have cars because we all know they like to go boom.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
No cars. No.
Look out for that Tacoma.
No duct tape vests. You know, none of that stuff.
No copper wires, no electricity. Actually, nothing. None of it.
But the values of how to live with your neighbor, like even if they and that would work, because if you look at, especially in lower income neighborhoods, a lot of the killings and stuff is over like last Thanksgiving, or maybe it was the Thanksgiving before that, someone stabbed like their uncle over eating the last like piece of turkey. And I'm like, who does that? But you have to imagine the kind of mindset you have to have, you know what I mean, or no, it was because they were taking leftovers. That's what it was. And they said they couldn't have any, and I guess they had took it too much or something like that. It was something minute, and it's really unfortunate that people would do stuff, you know what I mean, like that. So
like the Kroger where the employee was arguing with this customer, and the customer came back and shot the employee.
That had to be
all because there was a dispute, and the man took it personally and came back and killed the employee, killed the old woman.
I mean, if it was me, I'm always strapped, so he would have came back, you know, it would have been an exchange instead of a.
But maybe this ties back to the verse we read about the gifts.
Yeah.
Not everybody has they should, but not everybody has the capability to do.
Like the Lord blessed me with a quick draw.
To do common sense things, and that's why there's abundance of us, and that's why we need community, because maybe you're better at farming and aggravation. I think I said that wrong. I'm just going to say farming. Maybe you're better at farming, and I'm better at protection, so I can develop a security team for our community, and you can develop a way for food, like a food source.
Yeah.
And then this person can develop education, or this group of people can develop education. And that's kind of the best way to run society, is the people that are good at what they do, put them in those positions, and then the people that are good at these other things, put them in those positions, and then you guys come together and you thrive. Compared to one person saying, well, I don't need any of your help, I'm going to do it myself because I can do all of it. And then eventually they don't last as long as the group that decided to come together.
Sometimes. So like I have this thing that I'm working out, but because I want to start this organization for kids. I watched someone else do something similar, and I was like, oh, that's a good way to really like to be able to teach the kids values without having to just sit them down and be like, listen to this, you know what I mean? So like teach them how to change a tire, teach them how to. I have a friend who does brick masonry. Like I have friends who have skills that they could pass on. I thought like having a class of like 10 kids, but in that like you teach them less, because freedom requires responsibility. Like you need to be self-sufficient, but that doesn't mean that you're self-sufficient so you can take care of yourself, but also you're able to use those skills to help your community.
You need to be capable of many things, especially as
Good.
Especially if you're a man, you need to be capable of many things. But that doesn't mean neglect. That what Josh had said, you're capable not for yourself. You're capable so that way when the need arises for someone else, you can be there for them.
Yeah, because if you can't take care of your own, like, if you can't take responsibility for yourself, you can't take responsibility for your community.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is, people will talk about, like, oh, the rights of the community. The community has no rights. Individuals have rights, right? And so when you protect each other's rights, so it's a group thing. So, like, you know your rights, but you don't trample on someone else's rights. And by doing that, you create this space, this place where you can live free. You don't need a bunch of government regulations because you're able to respect each other. And then learning how to be self-reliant so you can take care of yourself allows you to also be an asset to your community, and so you can take care of your neighborhood together. So, and that's what I want to teach the kids is, like, how to be good citizens. And I can teach them how to be a good neighbor without, just sitting them down and dumping them with the Bible. Like, I can show them.
You can even say stuff like the love thy neighbor doesn't just mean that you love them in the common way that we see love. It could also be like, oh, well, this person needs their gutters cleaned out, or so you know how to handle that. This person needs their tire changed and you see them on the side of the road. You know how to handle that.
Yeah.
Or maybe this person needs someone to talk to them about something that you've been through, so then you can go handle that. Loving your neighbor doesn't just mean, oh, they do you wrong, so it's okay, I forgive you. It's more than that. It's more of how can you be an asset, not a liability.
Yeah, my neighborhood has potholes. Let me patch them. You know what I mean? You know how to patch a pothole? You've been waiting for like 6 years for the government to come through. It's gotten to the point where like a whole semi-truck can fall in it. You go buy some asphalt or whatever, fill it in. I mean, make sure you know how to do it right, but fill it in properly, stamp it, get it done, take care of your neighborhood.
Be the person that people can call to get stuff done. Don't be the person that's always calling others.
Yeah, unless you got money, then yeah. I mean, that's an equal exchange.
If you need help, ask for it. If you can't do it yourself, don't be stubborn. But if you can, be the person that's always answering a call, not the one calling.
Yeah.
You want to be an asset. You don't want to be the one that, oh, Jacob's calling again. Well, see what he needs this time.
That's true. Like, don't just be eating, also be contributing. So
even if it's not to the same level, like let's say you're in a bad spot and some guy's giving you a roof over your head and you can't really pay much, do other stuff. Clean his house. Do something that's what he would normally do. Take time out of your day, if you can do it, to make his life better. Don't be a leech.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, I think that's a good way to end, is overcome evil with good.
Yeah.
It's a good sentence to end on.
I agree. Shalom!